This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Here is your 2019 Phoenix Suns offseason recap. The Phoenix Suns ended the 2018-2019 season tied for the second worst record in the NBA with only 19 wins and 63 losses. The Suns still had no official general manager, a number one pick, and potentially a lame duck coach. That's when the successors were named. First, James Jones, an interim GM, was named general manager of the team, a first-time GM with only the previous 8 months as experience. Then, Jeff Bauer, former general manager of the Pelicans and Pistons, was named vice president of basketball operations. It was also announced that Trevor Bulkstein stayed on under James Jones. The Suns then announced details of the plan to renovate Talking Stick Resort Arena. But then,
as Phoenix fired its head coach Igor Kokoskov after one season. In Devin Booker's 4 seasons with the franchise, he's had 4 different coaches. So let's do the math, kids. That means next season it will be his fourth coach.
Igor's gone, so now the Suns have a GM, a VP, and no coach. The Suns received permission to interview Monty Williams from Philadelphia, David Vanterpool, and Nate Tibbetts from Portland, and the Los Angeles Lakers were targeting Monty Williams as their number one pick for coaching LeBron and the Lakers. Aaron Nelson was then taken by general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans, David Griffin. Then a Woj bomb dropped.
76er assistant Monty Williams has agreed to a deal to become the head coach of the Phoenix Suns.
Kerry, Phoenix offered Monty Williams a job, and they gave him the kind of security with a 5-year deal with what I'm told is significant financial commitment to give him reason to believe he could.
The Suns gave Monty Williams the longest coaching contract that Robert Sarver has ever given in a 5-year deal meant to bring stability to the Suns front office and effectively stealing him from the Lakers, forcing them to look for options outside of Monty, their number one option. The Suns then announced plans to build a, wait for it, state-of-the-art training facility. Very exciting for us here on the timeline. With the front office in place, a head coach hired, and plans for a new practice facility and renovated arena, the Suns can now focus on building a new team and maybe Zion?
Pick number 6 goes to the Phoenix Suns.
So the Phoenix Suns have dropped out of the top of the lottery.
Okay, maybe not. The Suns, even though they had the second worst record in the NBA, fell to the 6th pick in an NBA draft that had one of the highest touted prospects of all time and became one of the first victims of the new draft lottery rules. Suns fans immediately began Googling Jarrett Culver highlights and drinking whiskey while eyeing Tide Pods and licking their lips every few minutes. At least we can still try to get D'Angelo Russell, I told myself, while staring off into the distance. This started the summer of Gambo versus the Trolls. Gambo told fans what the Suns were going to do and nobody believed him. Listen, Gambo, we wanted D'Angelo. Things were going pretty well this summer so far, but then
Josh Jackson attended the Rolling Loud Festival in Miami. I've never been to the Rolling Loud Festival, but it sounds like a great time. Days and days of hip-hop acts going on stage. And it sounds like a great time to be a young, famous person. Except if you're Josh Jackson and you're a young, famous person that doesn't have a VIP pass. He tried to get in the VIP section. They said no. He walked around. He came back. Tried to get in the VIP section. They said no. Tried to get in the VIP section. They said no. Finally, a gentleman who was working the VIP section happened to be an off-duty police officer working a non-regular duty job. And he was like, sir, I'm going to now escort you away from the VIP section. And he got upset and he pulled his arm away and he ran away. And then eventually, this off-duty police officer tracked him down and put him in handcuffs and told him to sit in a golf cart. So what did he do? Got out of the golf cart. This is all according to reports and testimonies. Got out of the golf cart. Ran away from the golf cart in the handcuffs. was later detained by police officers, processed, and then he eventually left on just a $1,000 bond.
Don't worry, his time in Phoenix is almost up, and maybe even in the NBA. Sheesh. It was reported the Suns were open to trading their number 6 pick, so naturally, Suns fans began to argue about Lonzo Ball, Mike Conley, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, and D'Angelo Russell. Throughout the draft preparation, Monty also finalized his assistant coaches, including Steve Blake, Willie Green, Darko Rajakovic, Randy Ayers, and Mark Bryant. In the middle of all of this, there was a random report by a hockey reporter that Robert Sarver may have been secretly taking offers on the Suns. Nothing's come of that since, but a man can dream, damn it. Nobody had any idea what the Suns were really going to do in the 2019 NBA draft, and they did a lot. Here comes the Woj carpet bombing. The day started with the Phoenix Suns trading TJ Warren and the 32nd overall pick for, well, cap space, basically, a move that was immediately met with confusion, but was clearly made with future plans in mind. The Suns then traded the number 6 overall pick to Minnesota for the 11th pick and Dario Saric, the power forward that Gambo had been promising, and then shocked literally everyone by picking Cameron Johnson with the 11th pick, which was essentially viewed as, at minimum, 10 picks too high.
He went what?
11th.
Cam
in
Johnson
the draft.
11.
Yep. It's right on the screen right there.
Wow, bro. That's crazy. That's so love, bro. Because if y'all know Cam, you don't know how hard Cam worked. And, you know, it's a lot of people that doubt him. But, wow, that's crazy, bro. Wow, that's so crazy.
But they were not done. They traded the
happy.
future Milwaukee pick for big man Aaron Baines and the rights to Virginia Cavaliers champion and future Steve Nash impersonator Ty Jerome. Still not done, the Suns then signed undrafted 19-year-old high schooler / pogo stick Jalen Lecque to a 4-year deal. The Suns now have the oldest and youngest players from the 2019 draft class. The draft is over, and most analysts are not impressed. But free agency was next, and James Jones and company had a chance to make their vision clearer. At the start of free agency, Zach Lowe and others are reporting that the Suns openly covet D'Angelo Russell. Gambo refutes this idea of getting D'Angelo Russell vehemently. Suns fans began the tradition of arguing about 2 players that will never end up on the Suns by pitting D'Angelo Russell against Malcolm Brogdon, all while Gambo and Shams talk about the Suns being linked to Corey Joseph. Sheesh. Free agency is finally here. Shams has his guns loaded, Woj is dropping bombs from the sky, and the Suns dodged the Terry Rozier overpay immediately. But then, la bomba exploto. Shams Charania reports that the Phoenix Suns have signed Ricky Rubio to a 3-year, $51 million deal. The Suns now have a clear NBA caliber starting point guard. But Kelly Oubre has yet to re-sign. And after that deal, the Suns have to make a move to have the cap space for him. But before all that, we better get Frank Kaminsky on a 2-year, $10 million deal. Then, finally, after a report that Josh Jackson hotboxed an infant, the Suns made a cap-clearing move, effectively ending the disastrous 2-year career of Josh Jackson by attaching actual value in DeAnthony Melton to him and trading him to Memphis for Javon Carter and the cap space necessary to keep Rubio, Kaminsky, and re-sign Kelly Oubre. This trade was another trade that showed that the asset management era of Ryan McDonough was over and the just get him off my team era of James Jones has begun. Finally, the wave hits. Tsunami Poppy himself, Kelly Oubre, agreed to a surprising 2-year, $30 million deal to stay with the Phoenix Suns, and outside of a couple moves on the fringes, the Suns roster is now set. And since the roster is set, the national media can now get back to what they're good at, making fun of Devin Booker.
Hey, bro, we're not doubling in open gym, bro. I get that shit all season, bro. Come on, man.
The Suns finally surrounded Devin Booker with a team, but not playing in the FIBA World Cup, and a hilarious video of Devin Booker complaining about being doubled set every old man covering the NBA on fire. Nephew Kyle, I can't believe that one guy Devin Booker is not playing for the Team USA with my Celtics, carrying them to wins. Can you believe that, nephew Cap? Let's listen to Pearl Jam. Devin Booker is a target of the media again, and possibly for the dumbest reasons ever. Meanwhile, Ricky Rubio and the Spanish national team are winning the FIBA World Cup, with Rubio setting the record for most assists ever in national games and winning the MVP of the tournament. All while Baines is setting a record, creating the 50-50-90 club with Australia and proving to be a valuable bench piece for the Phoenix Suns. Mikal Bridges spent his time in Phoenix building muscle. Lindsey Smith eats popcorn with a spoon. DeAndre Ayton is raising money for the Bahamas. Kelly Oubre still hasn't sold a single item of Valley Boys merch. And that brings us to the 2019-2020 timeline Phoenix Suns season preview. Welcome to the timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast, brought to you this week by Axios. This is our season preview, Sam. I'm really excited because basketball is almost the next episode that we record. After this one, we're going to actually be talking about basketball that was played. I'm super excited.
Basketball that was played, Mike, coached by Monty Williams, assembled by James Jones, owned by Robert Sarver still, unfortunately, but we're almost at the point. We can talk about basketball pretty soon. So, this was a perfect time to do a season preview episode, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, when I was actually making the season off-season recap that everyone just listened to, I realized how much actually changed over the summer. So much of this team has changed. They changed general managers, they changed coaches, they drastically changed the makeup of the team. They're changing the arena, they're building a practice facility. So much has changed over the offseason, and I think going into the season, it's going to be a really interesting year and so much to talk about. Now's the perfect time to actually preview what's happening. So we're going to go over each of our 5 biggest questions, counting down to the biggest question that we have going into this season. Sam and I will actually go through each of them, alternate our biggest questions, and talk about the season through those questions. So there's a ton to talk about. Now, you heard the offseason recap as well, Sam. Did any of that stick out to you just thinking about this offseason?
Oh, I mean, it was just a wild ride from start to finish. It's funny, actually. You sent it to me. Great job, first of all, producing it. And you sent it to me, and I was listening to it for the first time with a friend of mine, my roommate, who is also a Suns fan out here in New York, who was dying at the Josh Jackson parts in particular. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I'm just really eager to see the on-court product before I make any huge judgments about the kind of talent that's going to be on the court for the Suns. I also really wish we could have gotten a real scrimmage today. I know you were at that event. I don't know if you want to talk about it a little bit, but just, kind of bringing fans out, even though it was a free event, just for what was essentially 30 minutes of practice and then a rookie dance-off was maybe a little bit lame. It would have been nice to talk about a scrimmage, but yeah, I'm just really excited.
Yeah, I just left the arena. I just came back home just to record this, and yeah, it was kind of pointless. Thanks for everyone for watching it. I did end up streaming it. It wasn't on the internet. The team wasn't doing anything. So usually when you're in the arena, there's enough people in there that your service on your phone kind of screws up. But it wasn't full. So I was in there and I thought, well, I might as well try to stream this. So people got to watch it, and I'm sorry it was boring. I obviously have no control over the product there. But for those who didn't see it, it's essentially they just ran some drills. They started with a weave. They split up the guards, the wings, and the bigs, and they shot some threes and did some basic post-up drills. It was really boring. A couple of things that I think stood out to me that I was really focused in on. Kelly Oubre seemed healthy. He was holding on to his right hand a little bit. That's the hand that was hurt in training camp. But he seemed healthy. Like, it didn't seem like something that was bothering him. Mikal Bridges was taking part in some of the early drills, but then halfway through the practice, he wasn't anymore. So whatever injury, it's supposedly a bone bruise on Mikal Bridges' knee. That seems to be something that is bothering him maybe a little bit more than Kelly Oubre. And I will say, with the drills that they were doing, just because Kelly Oubre was doing that, that's actually no indication to me that he's going to be playing in the preseason games. So there's a chance that we don't see Kelly Oubre until the season begins, or maybe even a little bit after that, depending on the severity of his injury. We don't know. It's enough that we don't have to have a hand surgeon come onto the podcast this year like we did last year, at least. Yeah. So there's that. But he looks okay. Mikal Bridges looks okay. No Aaron Baines. Now, Aaron Baines broke his nose. We didn't talk about it yet. He broke his nose at practice. I'm not sure how yet. It was at training camp up in Flagstaff. Probably an elbow to the face by one of the other bigs. There's a lot of them on the team now. And he wasn't there at all. So that makes sense. He's got a broken nose, an actual broken bone. That's going to take some time to heal. Likely going to be wearing a mask. We'll see if he plays in the preseason as well. But that, more than anything else, there was no scrimmaging. There was no interesting plays. We didn't get to see a look at the offense. There was not much that we can see. Jalen LeCue's athleticism was really on display. I thought that was the one thing that I thought was really fun to watch. But otherwise, it was just guys running a weave, right?
Well, yeah, you're right. Who won the dance-off, though?
Well, to me, it was Ty Jerome.
Jerome? What did
Ty
he do
Jerome.
again? Did he floss?
He flossed. Yeah. He gave us a floss GIF. Now, I don't have it. The video's not great on my phone, but we're going to have to find that GIF of Ty Jerome flossing. Chick Diallo was pretty fun, too, I thought. I don't know. It wasn't, it was awkward. Young guys in front of a half-full arena of people. It's exactly what it is. The purpose of that rookie dance-off was to make them feel uncomfortable, and it worked. They all looked relatively uncomfortable. I guess Jalen LeCue was fun, too.
Yeah. No, he seems like a fun guy. Cam Johnson looked really stiff.
Yeah, Cam Johnson's not comfortable dancing.
Ring the alarm about his flexibility and his hip issues now. I was going to say, I'm kidding, by the way, but I was going to say it's nice, I guess, if you want to call it that, if Kelly and Mikal have to miss a little bit of time in preseason, that gives us maybe a closer look at Cam Johnson going into the regular season. It gives us something to talk about. But yeah, bottom line, didn't seem like anything big happened today, so I think we can basically move on.
Well, actually, to your point, the one thing I did notice, when they split up into separate groups to run these 5-man drills, the 5-man group was of the starters included Cam Johnson. So it was Ricky Rubio, Devin Booker, Cam Johnson, Dario Saric, and DeAndre Ayton. And if that's any indication that they were working those guys together, and that was just a show, so who knows how real it was. But the fact that those 5 were together didn't seem like much of a coincidence. So it wouldn't surprise me if going into the preseason game, which is the first one's on Tuesday, if they actually end up as those being the 5 starters, then that would make sense based on what we saw. So I think you're right about that. Let's get into our 5 biggest questions going into the season. Now, this is not going to be all-encompassing, but I think there's a lot to talk about. Before we see basketball, we're going to talk about setting up what we're going to be looking at on the court, off the court, and really throughout the year, because this is going to be a long year, and so much has changed, obviously, as you just heard, and there's still going to be a lot to talk about. So let's get into it.
I just want to say to the listeners, we have not shared our questions with each other, so hopefully there's not a ton of overlap here, but I have no idea if there will be. I guess we'll see if we just think alike. But you can go first.
Okay. I will go first, and like we said, we're going down from our we're building up to our biggest question. So this is maybe the least important one, but I still think a very important one. And this is Dario Saric the power forward of the future for the Phoenix Suns? So Dario Saric is my first target here for our 5 biggest questions. The reason I brought up Dario Saric first is because there's a couple interesting things about Dario Saric. He's on a 1-year deal. That means that we have 1 year left to evaluate whether or not Dario Saric is an important piece going forward. Sam, we haven't actually talked much about it, but Sam wrote a great article for Bright Side of the Sun. Sam's now writing for Bright Side of the Sun every once in a while, so check that out. That broke down some of the plays that could actually work with the starters based on Tim Cranges, someone who helped us out in the past, who runs the Basketball Index website. And a lot of those plays, what you notice in a lot of them is how vital the power forward position is for some of the plays that he drew up. And what we need to see is Dario Saric coming through and actually there's a lot that he needs to do. He needs to play make, he needs to shoot, he needs to set solid screens, he needs to be able to roll to the basket to succeed on this team. And because DeAndre Ayton is somewhat of a defensive liability, he needs to at least be a serviceable defender at the power forward position. And if he's not, the Suns have an interesting situation for this offseason. Tyler Johnson is an expiring contract, and Dario Saric is an expiring contract. Together, those guys, once they drop off, you have a lot of free cap space that you can deal with if you want to sign someone who's paid a lot. And if you don't do that, you have to re-sign Dario Saric. And if you are re-signing Dario Saric, you're making a massive commitment to him for the future because that's going to eat up significant cap space going forward. So I think one of the biggest questions going forward is, does he fit with Devin Booker and does he fit with DeAndre Ayton? What do you think?
Well, it's a really good question to ask. Thanks for the plug, by the way, for Brightside. If you guys are listening to this Monday morning, that's when this episode should drop. I have an article dropping for Brightside today, being Monday, about Dario Saric. So go and check that out as well. But the thing about Dario is, like, if you make that commitment to him after this season, first of all, the 2020 free agency class sucks. Like, it really sucks, and we've talked about that. So it's all about, if you're trying to prioritize cap flexibility, I'm not interested in talking about next summer at all. I'm actually interested in talking about 2 summers for now. So if you sign Saric to a long-term extension, that's really what you're limiting yourself in, is your cap flexibility in 2021 to go out and get an actual all-star caliber player. So what they could do instead, I suppose, if he's not the power forward of the future after this year, is they could drop him after 1 season, not replace him with anyone particularly good yet, just get another stopgap power forward option next year, which I know is not sexy. It doesn't really sound exciting at all, but you could do that and preserve your cap flexibility for 2021. On the other hand, I just want to say, like, I have some faith that Dario Saric could be the future power forward of the Phoenix Suns. I think his defense has a long way to go. And I would be more willing to bet, quite honestly, that if you're going to start Saric next to Ayton is going to be the guy who improves defensively at center to be like more of a plus positive impact defender than Saric would be. I think Saric could be serviceable in that area. But I think offensively, he's basically a Swiss Army knife of a player. He's plus playmaker for his position. He's a much, much better rebounder than any of the power forwards we've had in the past few years, and that's not even to say that he's a good rebounder. It just means that Dragan Bender was very bad, and TJ Warren last year was disastrous in that area, and the Suns finished dead last in the league in rebounding, so that's going to help. His gravity on pick-and-pop plays is going to be absolutely huge. That's going to be enormous, and you were kind of alluding to that when you talked about my article from last week, with you can start so many plays with just a simple action of Saric setting a screen for Rubio at the top of the key, and it's going to create spacing for the rest of his teammates to have open options on the floor. But beyond that, like, the biggest thing about Saric is I don't want him pigeonholed into that sort of role of he's just going to take several field goal attempts per game, and most of them are going to be threes, and he's basically going to be Dragan Bender, because he's way more talented than that. He's a guy who can operate a little bit in the post, particularly with his playmaking. He's a guy who can pump fake. He can shoot mid-range jumpers after the pump fake. He's gotten a lot better at driving, something that Dragan Bender was terrified of over the past few years. Saric is not afraid to absorb contact and actually attack the paint. He's not afraid to act as the roll man off of a pick and roll. Like, he's not elite at any of these things. Shooting is still going to be his bread and butter, but he's solid at basically everything from an offensive standpoint. So I really hope that Monty Williams can use him the right way, and I think that if you do, him returning to his second-year form that he was at in Philadelphia, where he averaged something like 15 and 6 maybe, like that, he should have no problem doing that, hypothetically, for the Suns.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing with Monty Williams, because Ryan Anderson was the power forward for a long time with those Pelicans teams, and so he has experience with a guy like Ryan Anderson that's essentially just a guy who can shoot. But he also has experience with even Dario Saric, of course, and Ben Simmons. So there's like a little bit of Ben Simmons and Ryan Anderson in Dario Saric. He's sort of a fusion of those two players, not quite as good, obviously, as what Ben Simmons can do, because he's essentially a point guard. But he's got that playmaking, but he also can shoot. So I think there's a lot to watch this season with Dario Saric, and this is the only season we have to do it. So that's why I wanted to list that first as my first thing, and we can keep an eye on that going forward. Obviously, we're gonna talk about it all year long here on this podcast. But what do you have as your first question for the Suns going forward?
Well, I'll be proud to beat this dead horse a little bit more for my number 5 because we've talked about it plenty on this podcast already, but I gotta mention it again. What exactly are we getting in head coach Monty Williams? Again, sorry guys, I gotta bring it up. I know we've had the conversation before, but I've had some other questions about Monty recently, not criticism at all, just questions about I'm actually curious to see how this is going to play out. We've seen him go into media day saying he's open to basically everyone on this team, DeAndre Ayton included, shooting threes. He's open to playing a faster pace with these younger players. But we still don't have any confirmation of any of that. Obviously, we won't for a few more days when preseason starts and then later on when we get into regular season action. Other things I'm curious about, he recently told reporters that he was interested in a 10-man rotation. That means, it brings up these questions of how much burn is he going to give the rookies? And it also brings up the question that I haven't gotten a clear unanimous answer from Suns fans yet, I don't think, which is, if you want this team to be competitive, how much burn do you even want the rookies to get? It's if you're operating on a 10-man rotation, likely one of Ty Jerome or Cam Johnson is the odd man out. But how many minutes do you actually want those guys to see, assuming you want the Suns to win games this year, versus how much do you want to prioritize building for the future? And then the other thing about Monty is just, this is a guy who has a strong reputation around the league coming in here, whereas I think some of the Suns coaches of the past 5 years, not naming names, but some of them have had these interesting, basically the demeanor of a wet noodle. They've allowed a lot of shenanigans to happen. So I think it's interesting to ask, how much shenanigans is Monty Williams going to accept from this team? What's his discipline perspective? How does he go about disciplining players, and do we actually have anyone on the roster that we think is going to be in that position? I don't know, but given what we've dealt with over the past several years, I think you need to have a coach who's equipped to handle situations like that. So yeah, overall, just who is Monty Williams in 2019?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. As we talked about a little bit with Kellen Olson last week, a lot of what Monty Williams has talked about and how he plans to coach this team is different than you would have expected if you just anticipated that he was going to be who he used to be. He seems to be saying that his philosophy on how to win in the NBA has changed as the NBA has changed. And I think for me, with Monty Williams, it's prove it. It's kind of just prove it at this at this point. And it's not that I'm saying that it's not going to be like that. It's just that a lot of people say a lot of things, and you want to see it on the court more than anything else. And I will say, all of the bigs were practicing shooting threes in the open practice today. So it seems to be that's something that they're focusing on. Even Shaq.
Was Shaq shooting threes?
He shot some corner threes, and he actually made a few corner threes. The crowd was especially excited when he hit those. DeAndre Ayton, of course, shooting threes. He's talked about it all summer. But of course, bringing Aaron Baines on. I think when Gambo was talking about it throughout the summer, he kept mentioning that the Suns were focused on bringing in a backup center that could shoot threes. That was something that was a focus from whoever was the source for Gambo. So it appears to be that they built the team with that in mind, and that's something that they are planning on doing. So that fits with the narrative of the team going forward, and I want to see it happen. He says they're going to play fast. He says they're going to shoot threes. He says they're going to shoot or have a 10-man rotation. Those are all things that I like. The 10-man rotation might be something that I think depends on how the game flow is going. I have a feeling, because if it gets close and you need Devin Booker to play 38, 40 minutes, then you probably will. And that's what it's going to take to win some of these games. So we'll see. If I had to doubt any of them, it would be that one. And that would probably be the one that I'm most open to changing, I guess, is the best way of putting it. Do you have anything else to add for that one?
No, I mean, we haven't really talked about that whole 10-man rotation comment on an episode yet, but I'm just going to say that I think that could be tightened up a little bit more. You don't have to be like D'Antoni circa 2006 playing only 7 or 8 guys, but if whoever your 10th man in this rotation is, if it's going to be Frank Kaminsky, if it's going to be Ty Jerome or Cam Johnson struggling early on in the season, and you really are prioritizing winning games, I could see Monty opting for 9 guys at some point. That really wouldn't be out of the question at all. But I think 10 is a reasonable compromise to start.
Well, that actually flows really nicely into my second question, and it's related to the rookies. It's, can Ty Jerome and Cameron Johnson perform at a higher level than rookies normally do? Now, the Suns clearly prioritized rookies who can play right now. Not only did they pick older rookies with those two guys outside of Jalen Lecque, who's clearly not going to get minutes this year unless major injuries happen, they clearly targeted players that can play now. And not only do we know that just based on who they picked, we also had Brad Frederick on the podcast a month ago, basically a month and a half ago. And he told us that. He said that the Suns told him they were looking for rookies who can play right now. And I think the guys that they picked are players who I believe should be able to at least get on the court this season. Now, whether or not they perform at a high level is something that I'm not sure about. It's something that we're going to have to see to believe. And I think this is directly related to his comment about a 10-man rotation. They clearly believe that these rookies can play right now and are planning on playing them right now. And I think injuries might force them at the beginning of the season, depending on how long it takes for two of the wings on this team to actually heal up. But going forward, I think here's the main thing I want to point out. James Jones took a huge risk in drafting these guys. He did not draft guys who potentially have a much higher ceiling, especially Cameron Johnson. And that means that our level of faith in James Jones going forward will be partially dependent on how good Cameron Johnson is, because that draft was a big draft. We had a top 10 pick and he traded outside of the top 10. And then he picked a player that should probably not have been picked based on most people's mock drafts in the top 20. That's a risk, and that risk could pay off, especially if they're good this year, because that's kind of what they were picked for. But it also could be something that we look at later and say, maybe we should have learned a little more from that when we were evaluating James Jones going forward. He picked, instead of Jarrett Culver, he picked a 23-year-old Cameron Johnson, a guy who's been in college for 5 years. It's kind of a crazy thing to do. So basically what I'm saying is they need to perform well basically right away to make those drafts worth it, because that's why they were picked at that level. And we'll see if that's something that they can do going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Jones basically took the antithesis to the McDonough draft strategy, which is, pick the youngest guys possible. And after being scarred from those drafts and what we saw particularly out of the 2016 and 2017 draft, I want to believe that this time around is going to be better. But if, to your point, if Ty Jerome and Cam Johnson are not instantly producing at like a decent rookie level, at least probably an above average rookie level, they don't need to make the all rookie teams or anything. But if they're not producing at a decent level, then we're going to be seriously worried about them, because these are a couple of the older prospects in this draft class.
Exactly. And, we need to see that. So that's something that's easy to watch going forward. And I think they need to just not be net negatives overall. And I will say this, rookies they just are net negatives in general. So we will be evaluating this with the proper context in mind. But I think they do need to be better than most rookies going forward, because they should be. That's kind of what they were sold to us as. So I think that's going to say a lot about James Jones, and it's going to say a lot about, I think, even Jeff Bauer. I mean, the Jeff Bauer was tied directly to the pick of picking Cameron Johnson. And I will say, the fact that story came out immediately after the draft may not have been an accident. Maybe James Jones wanted people to know that Jeff Bauer was actually tied to that draft pick. So we'll see going forward how they do. I have a lot of faith in Ty Jerome because I spent a lot more time watching him. I'm not sure about Cameron Johnson, but I think that good of a shot at that tall of a player, that's a pretty good combination. So we'll see how they do going forward. Following a team you love in 2019 can be time-consuming. Trying to follow everything happening in sports is almost impossible. Scrolling through every app and visiting every website on a daily basis is also impossible. That's why I subscribe to Axios Sports, the best free daily newsletter in the land. Axios Sports is a modern sports page delivered directly to your email inbox. When you sign up for free at sports.axios.com, you'll get the best stories from the NBA and NFL to cricket and ping pong and everything in between. Axios Axios Sports also highlights the most important stats and trends, giving you the ability to stay informed. It's super simple to sign up, and it's free. Sports.axios.com. Not only will you be caught up, you'll be the friend sharing an amazing link with all your buddies. Join the 100,000 sports fans who get caught up on the day before it even begins. And best of all, there's no paywall, no subscription fee, nothing. This is free, curated sports content delivered directly to you. Sign up at sports.axios.com and try for free at sports.axios.com. Guys, how many times do I have to tell you to sign up for Harry's Razors before you actually do it? Do you like going to Walgreens and CVS and asking them to unlock everything just so you can get an overpriced blade? No, sign up. Get it delivered directly to you. I love Harry's because it gives me a close shave, easy glide, and a low price. Do us a favor and check out harrys.com/BlueWire for your free trial today. Why use Harry's? Well, it's easy. Quality, durable blades at a fair price. Just $2 per blade. Way cheaper than you can get from any grocery store or CVS. It's super convenient. Delivered directly to your door on your schedule with or without a subscription. And there's no risk to try it out, so you should do it right now. Listeners of The Timeline can redeem their Harry's trial set at harrys.com/BlueWire. You'll get a weighted ergonomic handle for a firm grip, 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel with aloe to keep your skin hydrated, and a travel blade cover to keep your razor dry and easy to grab on the go. Go to harrys.com/BlueWire to start shaving better today. What's your next question, Sam?
My question number 4 is, what is the future of the Suns' point guard position? So we already kind of talked about power forward with Dario Saric, but the Suns also took a big risk signing Ricky Rubio to a 3-year deal. And I think it's basically understood among Suns fans that Rubio has a lot of mileage on his body. Personally, I would have preferred a 2-year deal, but I'm willing to live with a 3-year deal. I'm kind of just curious. Like, I have no reservations about Ricky Rubio performing at a starting point guard caliber level this year, and I think even next year as well he'll be there. But he's not the future point guard of the Phoenix Suns. Like, when Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton are really hitting their prime, if they're still here 3 to 4 years from now, it's not going to be Ricky Rubio, probably, that's starting with them on a playoff team. I just think that's pretty unlikely. So the question is, as Rubio starts to decline, because I know Rubio is saying all this stuff about he's in his prime physically and mentally right now, but just if you look at historically, like, once point guards, especially with as much mileage as him, get into their early 30s, it can be a pretty quick descent, Steve Nash kind of being the one exception to that rule. So we need to evaluate what our future options are. And I know people don't want to hear about the 2020 draft right now. I'm not interested in talking about it in any detail, but what I at least can tell you about the 2020 draft is that we're looking at a draft where currently maybe half of the top 10 prospects, at least as they're evaluated right now, are point guards. You've got guys like Anthony Edwards and RJ Hampton and LaMelo Ball, if you want to go for, the meme choice, and Cole Anthony as well, who are all potentially in play for the Suns next year if they wanted to select another point guard, assuming that they don't make the playoffs and are once again in the lottery. So I want to see Ty Jerome get some burn because I want to see what they really have in him going forward. I want to see how well Ricky Rubio is holding up, especially after he logged heavy minutes at FIBA. It's going to be really interesting to see how Rubio is doing once we get to that stretch of the season where it's like February, March. And we just need to start thinking about these things. Like, are the Suns going to take a point guard in the draft next year? Are they going to be thinking about using that 2021 cap flexibility, if they maintain it, to go out and get Rubio's replacement? Are they grooming Ty Jerome to be Rubio's replacement? But we need to start thinking about this stuff now if we want to put the Suns in the best chance to succeed.
That's a really perfect setup for what my next question was going to be, which is Ricky Rubio the perfect fit? Now, yours was more long-term focused, and I think that that's vital right now. I think that once this team sort of flip the switch, if you will, to go back a year from now or a year in the past, I think the switch was actually flipped this year. They're attempting to build a winner now. And mine was more short-term focused. Is Ricky Rubio the actual perfect fit for this team going forward? Now, those of you who have been listening for a while, hopefully we pick up some new listeners with this episode, but those of you who have been listening for a while, you know how I felt about this offseason. I think that rolling the dice and getting the biggest stars possible is the best thing you can do when team building. And that means that I wanted D'Angelo Russell on this team because I thought that D'Angelo Russell had the highest ceiling going forward and was young enough to actually take a risk on paying him a large amount of money going forward. And they didn't do that, and they may not have done that for on-the-court reasons, depending on what you believe about the reports that they were worried about his attitude. And to me, that fits. That just fits the narrative of what this team is doing. They put a bunch of high-character guys around DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker, and they're trying to turn the team into a winner by fixing the culture with guys who are focused on winning. So my question is Ricky Rubio the right fit for right now? Is he the right fit for this coming season? Because if we're getting the Ricky Rubio from the playoffs, where he was shooting 20% from three, that's going to be a problem. Now, he doesn't need to be lights out from the three-point line, but he needs to be a threat. He needs to be guarded at the three-point line. And if we're going down to the end of a lot of these games and we end up not playing Ricky Rubio to close the games because Devin Booker just needs the ball in his hands, that's going to be a problem. Now, it's not going to be a huge problem because he's going to benefit the team no matter what. I mean, he's probably the third best player on the team right now, maybe the second best player on a lot of nights. So I'm not super worried about it. But the question is he the perfect fit? Because now that James Jones basically said this is a winner now, we're attempting to win, they're going to be making changes throughout the season. The trade deadlines become more important. The end of the season, the free agency becomes more important. So evaluating how Ricky Rubio fits on this team right now, this coming season, I think is going to matter a lot as far as the decisions they make throughout the season, and then, of course, in the offseason, similar to what you said. And I like that there are guys, and I'm glad you mentioned that, in the draft that could potentially fill that role in the future. And who knows with Ty Jerome? Now, nobody anticipates that he's going to be like an all-star point guard, but if he can hold up his end on the defensive end, what he brings on offense is a nice fit with these guys. He can run pick and rolls. He can play off the ball. He's a nice catch and shoot guy. And it just depends on what he can do defensively. So what do you think about that, Sam?
Didn't you compare him to Steve Nash in the intro to this episode?
I called him a Steve Nash impersonator.
Yes. Okay. Well, fair enough.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm a big Ty Jerome guy too. What's the likelihood that in year 2 or year 3 of Rubio's contract, he's really ready to play serious ball? Who knows? But again, that's the advantage of drafting prospects who are theoretically more NBA ready. So maybe he's going to develop faster than your average prospect, and he really would be. Something about Ty Jerome tells me that, the Suns don't really intend for him to fill that role. I think they think of him as a long-term great backup, and if you can get any more out of that, if you can get any more out of him than that, you'd be really happy with that, given that you drafted him 24th overall.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your next question, Sam?
Next question is about James Jones, because I think it's important to talk about James Jones, and I want to know, based on the moves that he makes this season, because we can't judge his offseason just yet since no games have been played, is James Jones actually good at this? Is he good with asset management, or is he kind of just getting lucky? And the reason I say that is we've talked about this on the podcast before too. There are some conflicting reports about things that have happened in the past with James Jones in the year that he's been the Suns GM. The Kelly Oubre trade was not supposed to happen the way it did. The Suns were not supposed to have Kelly Oubre. They did, but, did James Jones kind of just stumble into that, and does that affect the way we're able to analyze his logic in making the moves that he makes? In addition to that, there were some reports that Terry Rozier was the Suns' guy going into the summer, and that they signed Rubio over Rozier because the Hornets came to Rozier with a better offer. If you're willing to buy into that, James Jones kind of stumbled into Ricky Rubio. And I'm not holding this against James Jones. I'm just saying that there's enough of a shadow of doubt on the moves he's made so far to not convince me that he's actually good with asset management. So I really am going to be interested to, first of all, evaluate how this team is playing on the floor this year. But also, I want to actually see some trades. Like, I'm curious to see, well, I don't necessarily want to see some trades, but I'm curious to see if there are any trades at the deadline. I'm curious to see how James Jones moves forward with things like future picks and assets and the extent to which he prioritizes veteran talent over that stuff. You know, I want to see, while I want the Suns to be a competitive team, I also want to see if James Jones is actually the GM who long-term is capable of balancing youth and potential with tangible talent, because walking that line is really difficult. And I think there are very few GMs in the NBA who are actually capable of doing it. Like, we haven't gotten any indication so far that he really can be that guy, and the extent to which he values those things. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I think so here's with James Jones, I have a lot of thoughts, obviously. I am giving him a pass for this offseason in that I believe that the moves that they are making are designed to reset the culture in Phoenix and create winning habits for players who have not had them in the past, at least here on the Suns, and surround the best players that we have with guys that can teach them how to win. And what I mean by that is, individually, if you look at the moves that he's made this offseason, they're not that great. If you look at, but trading TJ Warren and attaching a second round pick to him just for cap space on its own, not a great move. Understanding that it created the cap space to sign Kelly Oubre and Ricky Rubio, yes, okay, in that context, it's a little bit better, because then you think about actually building for the future. If you look at trading the 6th overall pick, the Dario Saric move is kind of nice, but then taking Cameron Johnson with that 11th pick on its own seems like a reach. So you say, that's not so great either. But if you keep that in mind, and now I will give him some credit, though. I think if you are signing Ricky Rubio, the 3-year deal is a smart deal. You're not signing him too deep into his prime. You're not giving him 5 years as he gets older. That's a smart deal. I also think the Kelly Oubre deal, 2 years at $30 million, is smart. You have Mikal Bridges. Clearly, you believe in Cameron Johnson enough to at least believe that he can crack the rotation going forward. So you give Kelly Oubre 2 years, $15 million, and you say, prove it. Maybe you are potentially a star for this team going forward, and you can earn a spot above Mikal Bridges and above Cameron Johnson as they get older and enter their prime. So I think those are some smart moves. But I think more than anything else, I've described it as ripping a Band-Aid off, getting rid of Josh Jackson, attaching DeAnthony Melton, getting rid of TJ Warren, who for whatever reason just never quite fit with, Devin Booker, basically. He never quite fit with Devin Booker. So that's fine and all for one season. But going forward, he has to prove that he can improve this team without mortgaging our future. Because even if they are, say, that 35-win team, they could still get a top 5 pick, right? They could still potentially have guys that are long-term pieces going forward, and he has to prove that he can be the man to make those proper decisions going forward. And I think that longer leash that we gave him here on this podcast, that's not going to be the same going forward. This team is now a winner. They're trying to build a winner. So the moves that they make will be viewed in the context of attempting to build a winner. And I think there's a delicate balance there. And it does take a little bit, right? You do need a little bit of luck, for the record, because I think, for example, Danny Ainge almost traded his whole team for Justice Winslow. That almost happened. And he was lucky that they turned that down. So, things happen. And it does take luck to be a good GM. But actually, this kind of fits nicely into my next question. And this is Robert Sarver related. And this question is, how many wins does Robert Sarver think the Suns can win this season? Right? And so that's
70.
It's a little bit weird of a question, but what I mean by that is Robert Sarver's expectations for this team will dictate how he treats the staff on this team. If he thinks the Suns can make the playoffs and be a 50-win team, things are going to happen throughout the season that are not really good for the team going forward. We've seen it in the past. He's sold draft picks. He's fired guys a little too early. He's made changes. He's yelled at the players. He's ran into the locker room. He needs to have the right expectations on this team in order to make sure that they are given the right amount of time to grow into whatever they're going to be. yes, they have made moves to fix the culture. Can culture be fixed overnight? Hell no. It takes some time. It'll take time for DeAndre Ayton to learn. It'll take time for Devin Booker to learn. It'll take time for Mikal Bridges, who came from a nice college and a good system. It'll take time for all of them to mesh and for a culture to start building. And that means that they're probably not going to win a bunch of games right away. And if they don't do that, what will he start to do? Will he start to try and make changes? Will he immediately trade our first round pick to try and get better because they're not making the right, winning the right amount of games for what his expectations are? So Robert Sarver is he's the one guy really when I look at this team now, and I think that's the wild card. What is he going to do? And I think that's why I wanted to bring him up, and that's why I wanted to talk about his expectations on the team going forward. How many wins does Robert Sarver think that the Suns can win? We have no idea, right?
It's a really good point, Mike. I honestly didn't even think of Robert Sarver when coming up with these questions, but he is the wild card. And after the reports we've gotten over the past year, like you said, about yelling at coaches and just if there's anyone who can come in and intervene, then, yeah, I mean, he could tank the entire thing, right?
Yeah, he absolutely can.
But like, to give him a little bit of credit, I mean, it's not even giving him credit, but you can't, are we really to believe that Robert Sarver, for instance, is so stupid that he would hire Monty Williams to the longest contract in Suns history and fire him in year one? Like, he's not going to do something like that.
So I'm actually glad you brought that up. Managing Robert Sarver's expectations is a job of the general manager. It's the job of the coach of the Suns. And I know that says a lot, but like there is an element of their job where their boss is Robert Sarver and they understand what that means. You know, James Jones played on this team. Monty Williams has been around the NBA for 25 years. He knows who Robert Sarver is. So to an extent, it is up to those guys to set the right expectations and potentially temper his expectations going forward. And I think that there is an element of, there has been general managers in the past for this team that said, once we get this guy, this team's going to really fit. They're really going to come together. Once we get this new coach, this team's really going to come together. And that type of selling a move to Robert Sarver, which is what it might take to get him to agree sometimes, is what's caused problems in the past. And I think a lot of times people don't really, you know, it's on both the owner and it's on the general management in front office, because that needs to be a good relationship on both sides. So I do think there's an element, maybe he is dumb, maybe not. I don't really know anything really about Robert Sarver. He doesn't seem like a dumb guy, I don't think. But I
don't think he is.
But I think what matters is what he's been told about the moves that have been made, what he thinks about the moves that have been made based on what he knows, and how he feels about the team going forward. This is something that we'll never know, but I think as the season goes on, there will be some indications of how he feels, I think.
Yeah, the truth may come to light with that. I don't think he's stupid. I think he's just impatient, right? Like, that's been the attribute that we can most clearly see in Robert Sarver over the past, basically since he's owned the team. And the thing is, I don't know if I'm not sure if we've ever had a conversation about this, frequently the criticism about Robert Sarver is that he only cares about his bottom line. But then to be so impatient with the way he treats the staff of this team, you sort of do believe that this is a guy who cares about basketball, right? He's just going about it in a very naive, ham-fisted way, and that's sort of led to the instability we've seen on the Suns.
Funny enough, I think the last time we talked about it was a year ago, sort of right before the last season, because the question for us was, can an owner get better? Can an owner improve? And we don't know. We really don't know. I think that a lot of these moves that were made this offseason give me more hope and more faith than last offseason, or even a few of the last previous offseasons, because I was not much of a McDonough lover here on this podcast or even just on the internet previously. So, you know, there's reasons to have a little bit of hope, but I don't. I want to see it happen, and I think a lot of that rides on James Jones, because fair or not, what he does and how he treats and what he says to Robert Sarver are going to have a lot of influence on what the team does to improve or not. going forward. So there's a lot of pressure on both of those guys, and I think we're going to find out some interesting things about both of them. But what's your second to last question, Sam?
Number 2 is about the second best player on the Suns. Can DeAndre Ayton shake off the haters, shake off the hatred from NBA Twitter, shake off the hatred from the media, and establish himself firmly as a top 2, maybe a top 3 sophomore, basically by the end of this season? I don't want it to be a question of, is DeAndre Ayton better than Jaren Jackson Jr.? I want it to be like a known fact that DeAndre Ayton is better than Jaren Jackson Jr. I want it to be a known fact that he's better than Marvin Bagley, that he's better than Mitchell Robinson. Like, that should be the goal. If you're the number 1 pick in the draft, Luka Doncic is a little bit harder. Trae Young is a little bit harder. I don't expect Ayton to be the best rookie in his class because he was the number 1 overall pick. At a certain point, you have to be reasonable. You have to go in with reasonable expectations. But I think expecting him to be top 3 in his class, it would just be nice if at the end of the season we're saying Jaren Jackson Jr. still can't rebound and he still fouls out after 25 minutes per game. But DeAndre Ayton, that guy really improved his defense this year. And he improved his defense this year to the point where, he is a very, very good prospect going forward for the Suns and a clear number 2 option behind Devin Booker. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Like, I think DeAndre Ayton, while I'd like him to improve his offense as well, a little more polish would always be great. I think DeAndre Ayton could barely touch the ball more than he did under Igor Kokoshkov. He could average maybe 17 or 18 points per game instead of 16 in his sophomore season. And he could still finish the season with that much, much better reputation based entirely on how his post and rim protection, his post defense and his rim protection develops. And just to throw out the stat, to frame, how bad his rim protection was last year. And obviously we praise his perimeter defense from time to time, and we praise his lateral quickness. But there were 23 centers in the NBA last year who defended at least 400 shots at the rim. That's being defined as within 6 feet of the rim. And of those 23, all the good ones are hovering in the 50 to 55% range. Rudy Gobert is hovering right around 50%. He's like the alpha of that group, the thing that you strive to be if you're one of the best defensive centers. Of those 23 centers, only DeAndre Ayton and Willie Cauley-Stein let opponents shoot over 60%. So, he's got such a long way to go in that area compared to other guys in that group who were really taking a high volume of shots at the rim or defending a high volume of shots at the rim. And so I just, that needs to get better. And it got better throughout his rookie year, but I want a consistent season of under 60% for his opponents. The closer he can get to average, like around that 55% mark, the better. I also want him to shoot threes. Not too many threes because I don't want him to take away from the flow of the rest of his offense. I also want him, hopefully he's worked on his conditioning so he can play a few more minutes. Like, all of these things will contribute to the notion that Ayton is a better player. The Suns winning more games will contribute to the notion that Ayton is a better player. But above all, the thing that he has to get off his back is the defense. Like, that is how he can shut his haters up. And just establish himself as a dominant prospect. Not where he currently is, where he's kind of in the B-tier list of prospects where people are like, is this guy really, maybe he can make a couple all-star games, but there's a lot of doubt around the league of if DeAndre Ayton can be really like an all-NBA caliber player. I believe that he can, but I want him to show it this year.
Outside of all of these questions, outside of anything else that we're going to talk about, DeAndre Ayton's development is the number 1 most important thing for this team going forward. Devin Booker, I'm not worried about. DeAndre Ayton still has to prove that swing that McDonough and his front office took, and Robert Sarver and James Jones was involved too, that swing that they took was the right swing, because the timeline, as we talk about it, it's the reason the podcast is named what it is. The entirety of that led up to the one chance we had at the number 1 overall pick, and we took DeAndre Ayton with that number 1 overall pick. That is not the wrong decision yet. He has to prove that it's the right decision going forward, and that's the most important thing for this team, regardless of anything else we talk about, because players are the most important thing going forward. And if he's great, and if he's an all-star, and if he's a superstar, the ceiling of this team is pretty damn high, because that potentially could be 2 superstars on this team. So that's why I think that's the most important thing going forward. And actually that, once again, leads nicely into my last point. My last question, my number one most important question for this team. Are Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton the foundations for a playoff team? And as a caveat to that, do we trust James Jones to build that team? The most important thing going forward, along with DeAndre Ayton, like I said, I'm not really worried. I believe that Devin Booker is. But I wonder if DeAndre Ayton is. And it's not to say that I have doubts. It's just to say that we have not seen enough to know for sure. They are now surrounded by real, quality NBA players. And being surrounded by real, quality NBA players will now give us a look at what they're capable of. We get to see what Devin Booker looks like with a real team around him. We get to see what DeAndre Ayton looks like with a real team around him. Now, I'm not saying that they have to be a playoff team this year, but we have to see enough from them to believe that they will be the foundations of a playoff team going forward. Otherwise, moves will be made. And I think that's the biggest thing here is it will have to change. If we have doubts that either one of those guys, now, like I said, I have no doubt in Devin Booker personally, but this is going to be our real first look at them with real NBA players around them, so we have to find out for sure. If we have doubts about either of those guys, heads are going to roll, basically. We're going to have to change this team. Things will have to change dramatically going forward. So I think, to me, what we see from those two players, and I don't want to dilute the entire NBA down into these duos. It's a weird thing now where everyone's like, who's got the best duo in the NBA? Who's got the best young duo? Who's got the best duo in their primes? More than that matters, yes, but ultimately your best players are the building blocks. So for me, going forward, what we see from those two guys now that they're surrounded by real NBA players is the most important thing going forward. What do you think?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, just my number one is that too. So
yeah,
I guess
I figured it would be.
Yeah, we haven't overlapped a lot so far, but so I'll just get rid of that right now and we can just continue to talk about it. I think the most gut-wrenching thing about the timeline, if we're going to talk about it in those terms, this still being the timeline, even though the fans don't really use that phrase anymore, but we're still in kind of the same era of the team's existence. It's ours now. We are the timeline.
Exactly.
Yeah. The most gut-wrenching thing about the timeline is admitting that this doesn't work for most people. Like, just to throw a bullshit stat out there, maybe 90% of rebuilds. I mean, the ultimate goal of this is to win a championship. It's not to be a 45-win team, and get knocked out in the first round a few years in a row while Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton are in their primes and then say, well, we tried, and have to start over. But that's the reality for most rebuilds is that, you never really quite get over the hump. And the NBA, especially when it's 5-on-5 basketball, it's a league more so than other leagues where you have just transcendent talent that can dominate and can rise your ceiling so far above what transcendent talent can do in other leagues. Just the way that LeBron James has been able to raise his team's ceiling so many years in a row throughout his career. The NBA is always going to be a star-driven league where if you don't have a top 5 or top 10 player leading your team, I'm not saying you have to give up, but I'm saying you have to look at the historical odds and look at the number of teams that were actually able to win with a bunch of guys who are maybe a little more challenged in the talent department and, scrappy guys that were able to win. There aren't many historical underdog stories in the NBA. Not everyone can be the 2004 Pistons. Very few people can be the 2011 Dallas Mavericks. If Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, at least one of them, is not a top 10 player in the NBA in a couple of years, then you have to think about hitting the reset button. And I don't think we're at that point yet. I also, I've been asked recently by other people, do we think now that Devin Booker is in the first year of his extension that it's conceivable that he demands a trade at this point? And I have to be honest there and say that we also live in an era in the NBA where that's possible at any time.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that he could get frustrated at any time, even as ridiculous as it sounds that he just signed a 5-year max extension and could want out in favor of a bigger market in year one. It's absolutely possible that that could be the case. And the Suns have to always evaluate their options and always think about taking the best option. I have faith in Devin Booker. I have faith in DeAndre Ayton. I'm not putting unnecessary expectations on them for this season. The expectation remains the same as both Mike and I have been saying it should be all season long. Improve, but don't make the playoffs. We want 30, 35 wins. We just want signs of improvement. But there is always a chance that that is not enough for even those guys, and that Booker gets frustrated before we even get to see him play his best basketball on the Suns, or the other option that I was talking about before, which is the ceiling of this team is maybe, a first or second round exit, and it's ultimately not going to lead to anything that we want to see. It's not going to lead to that first Suns championship in franchise history.
And 35 wins is not the goal here. Clearly, we want to win 45, 50 wins, but 35 wins, I think, will give us a good estimation of what they can be after this season. And I think more than anything else, the overriding theme of this podcast is there are actual stakes now. It's not like it's not like the entire McDonough era where, well, whatever happens because we'll end up with another high draft pick and then we get another swing at it. That's not really the goal anymore. We have to get Devin Booker to want to stay. We have to prove whether or not DeAndre Ayton can be a franchise player. And then if they can, right? If it does work, we now have to rely on the infrastructure that we have in place with Monty Williams, with James Jones, to foster that into a real winner going forward. And I think that's the other part of my question. Do we trust James Jones to be the man to build that? And I actually, if I had to give him a grade so far, I'd give him a B probably, because I actually think he's done a really good job and everyone's kind of saying the right things. And this is the right things time of year, right? Everyone says the right things right now. So we have a better chance to see what's going forward, what it's going to be like. But when you're making moves to try and be a winner, they matter a lot, right? They're going to matter a lot. So I think we're going to get a chance to see what it looks like going forward. So we got some stakes now, Sam. What do you think?
We've got stakes. We're entering a new phase. I feel like we say that every year, but we're entering a new phase of Phoenix Suns basketball. We've turned the page. Our expectations going forward are going to be different. The lens that we use to analyze all of these guys is going to be different. The context is different. And let's play ball.
Yeah. Now, I will say, every time I saw Jalen McHugh swish a jump shot today, I found myself daydreaming, what if he's the man? What if he's the guy?
He could be the future, going back to my point guard question. He could be the future of the point guard position in 2026 when he turns 21.
Exactly. So, people who listen to this podcast, first of all, I want to thank you. Thank you to everyone who listened to us for the last year. Thank you to everyone who's listening now. This episode took a lot of work and took a lot of time. If you can, share this with other Suns fans. If they don't listen to podcasts, maybe they'll get into this one. If they do listen to podcasts, make sure to give them this one, because I think this will be a good place to start going forward. We're going to be the podcast that covers you every week for this season. We'll talk about the games. We'll talk about the storylines. We'll talk about the narratives. We'll cover everything for you this season. And I'm personally, and I know Sam probably is, very excited to cover this team going forward. And I can't wait to do it with you guys.
Well, fans, this is DeAndre, 22 Valley Boy. This is it of 2019, 2020, and I can't wait to see you guys out there. Man, let's get it.
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.